The government will look out for number one. They'll take care of themselves. They don't care. Forget all this nonsense about we'll do what's best for the people. Now they're running an annual $2 trillion deficit. And it's gone past the point of no return. It's gone past the point of no return because interest rates that the government pays alone are over $1 trillion per year. And interest rates are going higher. So we're actually in a doom loop at this point. I don't know why people have substantial positions in bonds. They're a triple threat to your capital. I've been buying gold since about $45 an ounce, back when I didn't have any money, but $45 was worth a lot more then than it is now. And I've never sold an ounce, so I've got a bunch of it. So yeah, I'm happy about what's happening with gold. I think the cheapest asset class anywhere are these crappy little mining stocks.
Hello and welcome back to Soar Financially, a channel where we discuss the macro to understand the micro. My name is Kai Hoffman. I'm the JR Mining Guy over on X, and of course your host of this channel, and I'm looking forward to bringing back Doug Casey. He's a best-selling author and speculator, particularly in the mining space. That's how I got to know him. But of course, he's an overall market commentator, a forecaster, and I'm really looking forward to an update from him to see where do we stand. Like last time we chatted, we talked about the Great Depression, market crash in the U.S., of course, as well. It's 6 months later now, and gold is trading at around $27.50 per ounce, much higher than 6 months ago, and of course way higher than 12 months ago. And we have to catch up with Doug about like what's the trend, where are things headed, how much steam is left in the gold price, like what can we expect moving forward here. We've got lots of macro events to discuss as well. We've had the BRICS meeting in Kazan, Russia, about 10 days ago now, but I'm really curious what he thinks, what is to come out of it. And we have to talk about, of course, the looming elections in the U.S. How much of an impact is it going to have, if any? How favorable is a potential outcome for gold and, of course, other commodities? That's our specialty here on the channel. Before I switch over to my guest, quick reminder, the easiest and, of course, free way to support our channel is by hitting that like and subscribe button. Helps us out tremendously, and I thank you deeply. Thank you so much. Now, without much further ado, Doug, it is great to have you back on the program. Thank you so much for joining me here on Soar Financially.
Well, thanks, Kai. It's nice to be back, although I'm not sure sometimes where back is. I'm talking to you now from Buenos Aires, where I live a good part of the year, and just returned from a trip to the exotic Orient for the last month. So,
home is where the heart is, Doug. Where's your heart?
That's a good question. It used to be in the U.S., but I'm afraid that the U.S. has kind of left me. It's not the same place that it used to be. In fact, I used to call it America, but I don't anymore because America is a concept, not a place. So now I just call that geographical area the U.S. because increasingly it's just like all the other 200 countries in the world.
No, definitely. We'll get to that. Like, we need to talk about what's happening in the U.S., like not just on the macroeconomic or on the economic side, but maybe on the social side we can discuss as well. But I want to start with a bit of an icebreaker. I warned you, Doug, that I might ask you that. But gold is trading at $2,750 an ounce, roughly, as we speak, and we have guests on, and for lack of a better term, and please don't take that the wrong way, but doom and gloomers, right? That have been predicting market crashes and just. To summarize, maybe the end of the world, okay? At $2,750, like how vindicated are you right now? Have you done your I told you so dance yet?
Well, I have a weekly or twice a week podcast and on YouTube, and I do a blog on internationalman.com. So yeah, of course. This is all quite inevitable. Actions have consequences. Cause has effect. You jump off a 100-story building, you'll pass 99 floors on your way down to hitting the ground. So, yeah, of course, this is all quite predictable. And I've been buying gold since about $45 an ounce. Back when I didn't have any money, but $45 was worth a lot more then than it is now. And I've never sold an ounce, so I've got a bunch of it. So yeah, I'm happy about what's happening with gold. I'm not happy about the reasons why it's going up. Basically, I've been saying for years that we are entered upon something called the Greater Depression. And a depression is a period of, forget about what the government says about 2 quarters of down statistics mean you're in a recession. They never define the word depression. I'll give you a definition of the word depression. It's a period of time when most people's standard of living drops significantly. And the fact is that the average North American standard of living has been dropping in many ways, not always, in real terms since the early 1970s when the dollar was cut loose from gold. And, the whole world, but especially North America, is built on a pyramid of debt, phony money printed by the central banks. And it's going to end badly. So what's the nature of this depression, the Greater Depression? It's not going to be like the one from 1929 to 1946. It's going to be longer lasting, it's going to be different, and much more unpleasant. So that kind of sums it up.
Let's start there. Let's start, talking about the Greater Depression. Like, based on your data that you're looking at, like, when has it started? Like, when do you think like that standard of living has significantly changed for us?
Well, starting in the early 70s, when the dollar was cut loose from gold totally, and that's when inflation has been getting out of control. The government has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. I mean, look, most people are unaware of the fact that only 100 years ago, well, 110 years before World War I, the U.S. government lived entirely on import duties and excise taxes, very little else. It was a very prosperous and very free time when the government only absorbed a few percent of the GNP. Now, and you can't believe the numbers really, they're all fudged and very complicated. It probably takes about 40% or more of the GNP, misallocates it, dissipates it. So to answer the question, the standard of living of the average person in the world goes up for two reasons. Number one, the average guy produces and he consumes, but he produces more than he consumes and he saves the difference. That builds capital. Standard of living goes up as you build capital. Second thing is technology keeps building upon itself at the rate of Moore's law. So those two things together have made things better. Meanwhile, state intervention has been making things worse. And I think we're in for a real catastrophe, despite those two long-term things, which will make the world better over the very long term. Over the short term, the next 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years, and that's barring World War III, which is quite possibly on the horizon as well, we're in for some tough times. And I've been saying that for years.
Like, it feels like economies are cyclical as well. Like, we've had decent times, like the .com time, like the markets were flourishing, people were making money, then the crash came. There were ups and downs in those cycles, I'd say. Like, why is it so much worse, it feels like, now than it was maybe 20 years ago, for example, or 24 years ago?
Because the government has granted itself the power to take much more control of the economy. Look, 20 years ago, it was considered scandalous if they were running a 20 or 30 or $50 billion deficit. Now they're running an annual $2 trillion deficit. And it's gone past the point of no return. It's gone past the point of no return because interest rates that the government pays alone are over $1 trillion per year. And interest rates are going higher. So we're actually in a doom loop at this point. And what's happening to those deficits that the government runs? It used to be we could peddle them to the Japanese or the Chinese or other foreigners. It's not possible anymore. They're liquidating the U.S. government debt that they have, the government paper, the dollars that they have. Uh, so what's happening to that $2 trillion deficit? How's it being financed? That paper is all being sold to the central bank, the Federal Reserve, and they credit the U.S. government's account at commercial banks with Federal Reserve notes with dollars. And that increases the money supply. And that increase in the money supply is what drives up prices, drives up all kinds of prices, drives up stock prices, though. That's considered good inflation. But it also drives up the prices of the things that people buy to live on. That's considered bad inflation. Fact is, it's all bad inflation because that money that spews, that phony money, that fiat money that spews out of Washington and New York flows first into the hands of the elite, the government, top people. They get it first. And then as it goes down, it loses value. And so we, the people, just get the table scraps that are left after these guys drink from the higher fire hydrant of money that comes out of DC and New York. I'm talking about America. I know you're in Canada, but it's the same drill, no matter what country we're in.
Yeah,
Because almost all the governments of the world are bankrupt. Almost all of them are being criminally mismanaged. In fact, the only one that's not is where I am right now, Argentina, with the election of Javier Milei about 9 months ago. He's taken radical efforts to disband the government, actually, to get rid of it, fire all of its employees and abolish all of its departments. So actually, that's one reason I enjoy being here in Buenos Aires, because things are perking up, not degrading the way they are in North America.
Let's stay in Argentina for a second, since you brought that up. I find that quite interesting. Like, what can we learn as Western nations from what Javier Milei is doing in Argentina? And given it's only been 9 months, as you pointed out, it's only been a short period of time. Because I think before then, as a foreigner in Argentina, you did have to worry about like currency and getting your money out of the country. For example, like when you were a mining company, you had a hard time getting funds out of the country, for example.
Oh, yeah. Look,
Right?
I've been coming to Argentina since how many years? 45 years, a long time. And twice during that period of time, when I changed dollars for local pesos or australs or whatever they had at the time, had a stack of things like this just to walk around. It was absolutely ridiculous, absurd. Things have normalized a bit right now. Otherwise, I could show you a whole stack of things that I'd need just to walk down the street to a restaurant if I didn't want to use a credit card. Argentina, at the beginning of the 20th century, was one of the most prosperous countries in the world. If you were a European and you wanted to get out of Europe, perhaps anticipating the disaster of World War I, where would you go? Well, you'd go to the US or Canada or Argentina, maybe Australia too. But that's where you went, because it had a high standard of living, one of the highest in the world. But it's degraded gradually over that time as the ideas of socialism have totally corrupted the society. And with Mussolini, who invented the word fascism, incidentally, most people are completely unaware of that. Fascism being, as Mussolini described it, a partnership, they like that word, between the state and corporations. Fascism totally conquered Argentina, and they imitated Mussolini. And the standard of living in Argentina here has been in slow collapse for the last 70 or 80 years. And what happened here is it actually hit bottom. The young people got totally fed up of being ripped off. They were leaving the country. But the ones that stayed, and it is the young people that voted for Milei, put him in office because he actually said, I'm an anarcho-capitalist libertarian. I want to abolish the state. It serves no useful purpose. It's purely destructive. And he's doing his level best to do exactly that, firing scores of thousands of government employees, abolishing agencies, so forth. Not as quickly as I'd like, but he's fighting an entrenched deep state. And it's hard here in Argentina. It's going to be even harder in the U.S. And I'm afraid Trump's not the guy to do it, but he's better than that cackling hyena who might actually be elected in a few days. In fact, I've handicapped Kamala to win the election. Well, not win the election, but be installed, mainly through cheating, frankly.
Javier Milei is an interesting case study. Like I'm trying to figure out like what we can learn and take away. Like we have the U.S. elections right now. If we were, would a person like Javier Milei like have a chance even in the U.S. like an anarcho-capitalist to win and make some changes? Sort of what you describes Elon Musk a little bit in the U.S. Like,
It does.
just on the periphery, like there's different various opinions on him. Like, but he does want to get rid of some of the overhang, some of the overburden of government, right? Like he wants to cut government jobs by 30% or cut government spending, sorry, by 30%. So there's a bit of that ideology maybe in there. Does it even have a chance?
That's not nearly enough of a cut. That only takes us back to proportionally back to the levels of government spending maybe 25 or 30 years ago. That's not nearly adequate. Millet wants to cut government spending by 95%. I mean, look, what Millet believes here in Argentina is that since the government is coercion, it's force, it comes out of the barrel of a gun, as Mao Tse-tung said, therefore it ought to be limited as much as possible. What does that mean? It means a defense force. It means to protect you from violence from abroad, a police force to protect you from violence within the country, and a court system to adjudicate disputes without resorting to violence. It should do that and nothing else, okay? So there's a lot more than 30% that needs to be cut, I promise you. Or as Trump would say, that I can tell you.
You mentioned earlier how the system ran was just import tariffs and excise tax. It sounds like Trump also has some of those ideas, like raise import tax or tariffs or install tariffs on imported goods and cut corporate taxes or taxes in general in the U.S. Is that sort of like the same playbook? Like are they reading from the same songbook there?
No, it's not the same playbook.
Okay.
Because in order to do that, you'd have to abolish the IRS. And I'm sure he'd like to do that. But I think that as a practical matter is impossible in the US. And anyway, look, it doesn't matter if he reduces nominal income taxes or whatever. The only way you can reduce taxes is by reducing spending. Because when the government spends, it's going to extract that money from someplace, which means from its subjects. So the only way you can cut taxes is by cutting spending, period. And his idea about raising import duties, this is a disastrous idea. That was what actually set off the last depression in 1929. When you make it impossible to import, because imports are so expensive, the people that are supplying those imports don't have money, and then they can't buy from you or can't buy from each other either. So no, it would be disastrous to raise import taxes and duties. To solve the problem, you have to radically cut spending, not treat this like some type of a Rube Goldberg machine where let's push the switch and change that. You've got to abolish the whole damn thing.
that'll be tough to do, as you said. Like no, and
Yeah,
nobody's even willing to tackle that
no,
object. Like nobody's even talked about the debt crisis in the U.S. I don't
no.
think a single syllable has been uttered in that direction. So
Yeah, I mean, I like to say these things, although I know that it's pointless because it's not going to happen. But I think it is important to put the meme out there so that, because a lot of people have never even thought about this, you know. So at least if you get them thinking. And I have a lot of confidence in Musk. Musk is I don't know what he believes or what his philosophical views are, but he's clearly a genius, having created three huge, gigantic, successful businesses in a short period of time. He's extraordinary. I don't have much confidence in Trump, frankly. I really enjoy listening to him talk. He's quite entertaining. But the problem with Trump is that he's has no philosophical core. He's an ex-liberal Democrat that still has these basic liberal Democrat values. What I like about Trump and what puts him head and shoulders, well, much more than head and shoulders above that mental and moral midget, Kamala, is the fact that he's a cultural conservative. He doesn't want to overthrow the basis of the country. And that's what the Jacobins, represented by the Democratic Party, and that's what they want to do. They want to rip the old culture out and replace it. They want to see something honest to God, like what happened in China during the Great Cultural Revolution. They're very dangerous. And when I said they're Jacobins, I mean it. They have the same political philosophy. They have the same psychological makeup as the Jacobins after the French Revolution did. They're very, very dangerous. And the fact that it's realistic to believe that Kamala could be installed as president, this is a very, very, shows you how far the U.S. has devolved.
it's definitely interesting to follow as an outsider. I'm based in Germany as well, and looking from the outside in, and just seeing somebody being installed as a presidential candidate without due process has me a bit baffled. Like even just going through the primaries and just to switch out the candidate after all the primaries is something that probably be something for the history books personally. So we'll have to see how that plays out. We'll have to see how the actions play out. It looks like Trump is actually in the lead, depending on what news source you want to believe and what website you open. But there's another macro event in the U.S. happening next week as well as a Fed meeting, of course. And you mentioned something interesting. You believe that interest rates are going to stay higher or go even higher. Market right now, it's short-term think, of course, is predicting just a 25 basis point cut. But where do you see things headed, and why shouldn't the Fed cut rates further or even increase rates right now?
Well, I guess they can cut rates as far as they want, but those are only short-term rates. The more they cut rates, the more money is going to be financed by the government, and the more fiat is going to be created to cover that deficit. Long-term interest rates will reflect the credit risk, and it's not out of the question that the U.S. government could default on its gigantic debt. I know that sounds incredible to say, but governments do it all the time throughout history, and the U.S. could join that party. People forget that in the early 80s, the U.S. government itself was paying 15 to 18% for money. That's what interest rates were back then. And the situation is much, much more serious now than it was back then. So from here, I think interest rates are headed way up. They fell for about 40 years from the early 80s to 2022, and they're headed back up, but this time with a vengeance. And those high interest rates are going to have lots of serious knock-on effects, but some of them will be good. One of the good things is it will cause people to borrow less, consume less, and save more. Although it's very dangerous saving with dollars because the dollar is a floating abstraction, and it's going to reach its intrinsic value sometime in the not terribly distant future.
Is the bond market an indication of things where things might go? Because I personally found it quite interesting when the Fed cut rates, that the bond market actually, the bond yield, for example, the 10-year jumped up. It's around 4.2% now for the 10-year, trending higher. Is that the first sign of it? Is that exactly what you've been talking about?
Yeah, I don't know why people have substantial positions in bonds. They're a triple threat to your capital. You've got the interest rate risk. Interest rates double, which they will in the foreseeable future, and the value of your bonds roughly falls in half. You've got the default risk, which is a real risk now, even on government paper. And you've got the inflation risk, where, yeah, you can get your interest in capital in dollars, but they're going to be worth a tiny fraction. So it's other than a trading vehicle, a short-term speculative vehicle. I think at this point it's kind of crazy to own bonds. I own a couple of bonds that are convertible bonds for mining companies. Okay, I'm buying them because of the convertibility option, but other than that, I wouldn't touch bonds.
Yeah, 4.3%, by the way, for the 10-year. Duration risk is an interesting one. Like, do you actually think the U.S. will default within, let's say, next 30 years? Because that's one of the longest running bonds are 30 years. Like, do you think the U.S. will default in that time period? Like, how do you see this playing out on maybe a bit of a time scale? I know it's tough to grasp because, like, we've been calling for a recession for like 2 years. It hasn't happened, but a lot of things have happened that we've predicted. It just takes a bit more time. So, like, not putting you here under the gun here, Doug, but I'm just curious, like, how do you see this playing out on a time scale, maybe?
30 years. I wouldn't doubt that in 30 years, the map of the United States is going to look different than it does now. I wouldn't doubt that we're going to have secession movements in the U.S. There's a lot of possibilities. Maybe all the Hispanics in Southern California and other places will decide, wait a minute, I don't want to pay 25% of my income, which is where it's going to go, for Social Security alone to support some old white broad in Massachusetts. Maybe they're going to secede. You saw this recent movie, Civil War. I finally got around to seeing it on the plane back from Sri Lanka, and it's not far off from what could happen. So I wouldn't plan 30 years ahead. I wouldn't plan on the U.S. government being able to pay its debt 5 years from now. And we're not even talking about the very, very real possibility of World War III, which, these neocons in Washington they're prodding the bear. They're just asking for trouble in any number of places, and somebody's going to give it to them.
I'm just, wondering, one of my biggest fears, like we've been talking about this, and maybe it does take 30 years for, let's say, doo to hit the fan here. Like, I'm really curious to trying to find that straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Like, I'm curious, like, when you open the newspaper in the morning, like, what do you look for? What has happened, like, or a trigger, right? I'm looking for that. There's something we probably don't expect, but it'll happen overnight, and then the world looks different the next morning. So I'm curious, like, do you have any prediction what that could be? And like, what should we be looking out for here, Doug?
Yeah, that's funny. You mentioned open the newspaper, and since I'm mainly out of the U.S., my newspapers are digital, and I'm kind of shamefully admitting I subscribe to the Fag Hag Rag and the Jeff Bezos owns in Washington, as well as the New York paper, New York Times, that prints all the news that fits. I read them strictly for entertainment and amusement, and to see what these psychopathic socialists actually believe and are trying to get other people to believe. So, yeah, I open the newspapers in the morning. It's entertaining. Also, I don't pay them their standard subscription fees, which are both in the $150 per year range if you're an American. down here in South America, they only charge me $10 a year, and I figured, okay, I can give up $10 for that entertainment. Um, so what do I see every day that makes me think or scares me? Almost everything scares me uh, because I think the very fact that apparently half the country uh, would even consider voting for that cackling hyena, Kamala. I say Kamala usually, which is it's a cognate in Spanish. It means how bad. But uh, the fact that this person is in a position to, as a practical matter, rule the world is highly disturbing. I mean, the average American, even 50 years ago, would have been mystified and amazed and disgusted. How could this happen? It's uh, it's like we're electing a dog king. That's a term from the Middle Ages where originated in post-Viking Denmark, where one king that was conquering a part of Denmark, just to really put the thumb on these people, installed a dog as their king, because he, in effect, saying that's what you people are worth. That's who should represent you. So yeah, we might install a dog king in the U.S. and we'd be a laughing stock, actually, even more of a laughing stock than we are
Doug's like,
right.
I just Googled, sorry to jump in here, but I just Googled electing a dog king on Google, and the first thing that came up is like, meet the dog mayors of America. We found 9 dogs have been elected mayor. Small towns in California, Minnesota, Colorado, and Kentucky, as well as San Francisco, all have had dog
Oh.
mayors. I was like, how
Well,
does that fit in? Like,
that's a very good statistic, and it's very funny. And in those small towns, I presume they're all small towns, it shows that people want to delegitimize the government because, frankly, there's very little that the government does that's useful. And it would be wonderful if it was delegitimized. During the Vietnam War, people used to say, suppose they gave a war and nobody came. I'm all for it. But we could go further. Suppose they gave a tax and nobody paid. Suppose they gave a regulation and nobody obeyed. I'm of the opinion that society gets along quite well without people trying to run it and direct everything. And the kind of people that go into politics are inevitably the worst kind of people. They're the kind of people that want to order other people around, tell them what to do, and think that they're suited to do it. So they're not only stupid, they're arrogant. They're horrible people. So anybody that wants to be a politician shouldn't be voted for that very reason.
no, I agree, and it is a difficult topic here. Then I want to make a switch a bit to the precious metals, Doug, and we talked Bitcoin last time as well. And with gold at 2750, do you still see the correlation? Do you still see gold and Bitcoin as equals? Like now that gold has sort of caught up a bit in terms of price, or not just caught up, but really had a nice price move. Do you still regard them as equals, and are they still sort of on the same asset tier, perhaps, for you?
Yeah, I like them both. And the reason is it's always been true of gold, but now it's becoming true of Bitcoin as well. They're the only financial assets that are not simultaneously somebody else's liability. In other words, you don't have to rely on somebody to make good on a promise with them. If you own them, you own them. And gold, you have it in your hand. Bitcoin's a little bit more problematical because it's just a digit on a computer, but it's an excellent transfer device. And in today's world, where the next thing governments are going to be doing all over the world is putting on foreign exchange controls, which is going to make it very, very hard and costly for you to get your money out of a given country. So that's where Bitcoin shines, especially. I like them both.
No, it makes sense. I think in 2024, where a lot of things are digital or everything's digital, having a digital version of gold, which sort of that's how I see Bitcoin. It makes sense. So
Yeah.
I do agree with you. I don't think it has to be black and white. You can own both.
And listen, one of the nice things about Bitcoin is for the younger generation, it kind of is they had to figure out what's the value proposition in Bitcoin. And young people figured out that they needed some alternative to the fiat dollar. And now many big people call the dollar the fiat dollar because it's made out of nothing. And people weren't really thinking that way so much before Bitcoin came up. So Bitcoin's a friend of gold. Bitcoin is kind of a
Gateway drug.
gateway drug to gold. That's right, exactly.
No, fantastic. BRICS, I forgot, like, because it fits in the gold narrative a little bit. Before the BRICS meeting in Kazan about 10 days ago, rumors were flying high that they might announce the unit as their new currency, or maybe maybe announce it at least, not really install it, but of course announce it. 40% gold backed. It hasn't come to fruition, and even Putin said we might not have a common currency anytime soon. My point is, like, what are you taking away from the BRICS meeting, and how do you think it's impacting the gold price right now, and how has it impacted gold going into it?
People realize that the dollar is a floating abstraction. It's the unbacked liability of a bankrupt government. So they want to dump it. They don't want to use it. They don't want to trade between each other where everything clears through New York and put themselves at the discretion of the US government. Look what happened to the Russians. I mean, they lost hundreds of billions of assets just because Washington decided that, yeah, we want it, so we'll take it from you. So, yeah, it's a good idea that they're getting away from the dollar. I mean, the dollar has been the major export of the US for the last 40 years. It hasn't been Boeings, it hasn't been wheat, it's been dollars. Trillions and trillions of them. I don't know how many. They don't know either. $30 trillion dollars are outside the US, and they're hot potatoes because nobody has to hold them. They're just convenient for the moment. So this new currency that they're talking about, it's a good idea to have an alternative. But look, the Russians, the Chinese, the Indians, the Iranians, the Brazilians, there's no reason for them to trust each other. Having a common currency actually doesn't make realistic sense. They already have one. It's called gold. So you don't need 40% gold backing, 100% gold backing, and you don't need a currency. You just need the metal itself. That's all. That's the way it was before the last depression. Except it wasn't. It was fractional reserve. That was the problem. It wasn't 100% reserve. It was 40% or whatever the numbers were. They were dishonest. So you can't have fractional reserve any place, in a currency or in banking or anything. But it's a good idea. They're going to go to gold is the answer to the question, because they don't trust each other. And that's why they've all been buying gold. And the public isn't involved in gold yet. It's mostly these central banks that are trying to dump each other's fiat funny money. And they're buying gold. What else are they going to buy that they can use as a money? I mean, you can't use cattle as a money, can't use wheat as a money, can't use artwork as a money, can't use lead as a money. Nobody can store that much of it. That's why gold has always been used as money. It's uniquely suited and well qualified for use as a money.
Now, interesting fact.
It'll be reinstituted. It'll be reinstituted. And we'll use gold in daily commerce, unless, of course, the world turns into a police state first on the way.
Now, interesting fact, like Europeans actually have been selling their ETF gold holdings in September, while the US and Asia has been buying. So, as you said, the generalists haven't woken up to it. It's just central banks and very select few that are buying and that are in the market right now. Just quick speculation: does the East have enough gold yet, or do they continue seemingly vacuuming up any ounce of gold they can find in the market right now? It seems.
Well, I think they'll continue buying it, quite frankly, and all through Eastern Asia. Well, not everywhere, but certainly in China and Thailand and India, there are gold stars everywhere. I haven't been to China for some years, but it amazed me. There are gold stores everywhere in Beijing and Shanghai. The average Chinese guy is very used to accumulating gold. And that's still true today in Southeast Asia. I mean, they don't want to hold this some paper money that can be crumpled up and dry. And they all buy gold. Their savings are in gold, which is very intelligent, unlike North Americans who don't do that. They hold paper, which is bad enough, and it's in banks, which is even worse because I don't know what's going to happen to these banks. I mean, most of them are bankrupt, frankly. And of course, if the government bails them out, it can only do that by creating lots and lots more fiat monies. They're in a death spiral at this point in North America.
Yeah.
In addition to the fact that the political leadership in both countries is criminally bad.
You called it the doom loop. Is there any way escaping from it? Like, what's the, like, I'm always curious, like, what is the end game? Like, how do we escape this? Like, is it a massive default? Like, how do you see this playing out? Like, we haven't talked about that. Like, we've talked about some ideas, but we haven't really talked about what the end game will look like.
Well, maybe one end game is like that movie Civil War, which I just saw recently, which was very well done, I thought. That's one end game, a very unpleasant end game. Maybe World War III is another end game. That could be even worse. So what's the end game? Well, there's a primary rule of life, and it's like the prime directive of life. It's survive at any cost. And it doesn't matter whether you're an amoeba or a person or a government, you do whatever you can to survive. And a government, of course, since it's got guns and all kinds of power, will do whatever it needs to. It might default on its debt. It might just, who knows what it'll do. But they're in a desperate situation right now. So the government will look out for number one. They'll take care of themselves. They don't care. Forget all this nonsense about we'll do what's best for the people. I mean, anybody that believes that's going to get what they deserve. No, the government takes care of itself and its own and its supporters and its sycophants. So that's what they'll do. And it'll be, because the government produces nothing, whatever it does to survive itself will be at the expense of its subjects. So that's what's going to happen. But there are a number of ways that can happen. But I hate to be laying such ladling out so much gloom and doom to people that are listening, but I don't think people are paying adequate attention to how serious the situation is. Even though the sun is shining now and the stock market's up and nobody's rioting in the streets at the moment, which is all good.
Is there any scenario that could play out in a positive way in your mind? Is there anything that could make this whole situation that we're in end in a positive way? Meaning, I don't even know what that means, positive, like in a positive way. Like, it probably means that we just continue as is. But
listen, what they could do is basically what Milei is doing in Argentina. Basically, start massively firing government employees, countering old laws, not passing any new laws. I mean, all these laws are terrible, abolishing agencies. As far as the mass migration that's occurring both in the US and Canada, listen, I think it's fine if people move from one country to another. What's not fine is that you subsidize them and pay them to move. And these many millions of migrants that are in the US are basically being paid to come, and they get free housing and free medical and free food and all kinds. That's ridiculous. This is unlike the immigration that we had in the past, where you could get off the boat and good luck. But that's not the way it works now.
No, it's a different world that we live in these days. And Doug, I have one last topic we need to tackle real quick, and that's the mining sector. That's how we know each other. That's how I've got to know you, of course. You've been the founder of KC Research, covering a lot of mining stocks. We got to talk investment sentiment and maybe personal anecdote. I've been to a conference in Colorado just recently in September, and it was all positive. Investor meetings here this week, positive. Like, what's your sense of sentiment these days, and where do you see things are headed? Just looking at gold is up 34.5% for the year. GDX is up only 36%. So it's pretty much tracking the gold price. It doesn't seem like it has broken out yet. So what are your thoughts?
I think the cheapest asset class anywhere, are these crappy little mining stocks. And I've got to preface whatever I say about mining is that it's a crappy 19th century choo-choo train business. I mean, it makes no sense as a business, or very little sense. But that said, they're so cheap right now, and there's so much reason to believe that people are going to pile into them at some point that these mining stocks, these little ones especially, and I'm not sure if we're talking about explorers that have nothing, or developers that are spending loads of money to develop what they have, or producers, or all three actually. In the last 50 years, there have been 5 huge bull markets, 10-to-1 shots, because it's such a tiny little market cap part of the market. I mean, these things aren't small caps. They're not mini caps. They're not micro caps. They're not even nano caps. A lot of them are pico caps. They're so tiny. So assuming that they survive, most of them don't, it could easily go 10-to-1 as the whole market. And some of these crappy little stocks will go 100-to-1 if they get lucky. And I've personally owned in the past 2 companies that went 1,000-to-1, and not in a lifetime. I'm talking in a matter of a few years. Yeah, so it'll happen again. That's my prediction. And now is the bottom. Now is the time to buy them. I'm convinced of it. So, yeah, I'm bullish on them. So that's a happy word to leave.
I was going to say, let's leave on a positive note here, Doug. I think we're just at the beginning of a major bull market in the mining stocks as well. We've seen a proof of concept. Agnico Eagle, for example, is up 63%, outpacing gold and the indices, which is a positive thing. So we were getting our proof of concept from at least one major miner. We don't have to talk about Newmont and Barrick because they've been underperforming, quite honestly.
Yeah, and the public doesn't own any of these things. In fact, nobody owns any of them. I mean, they're sold out.
Yeah, no, 100%. Doug, super appreciative of your time. I know you have a YouTube channel. You write a newsletter, The International Man, as well. How can we find more of you? Where should we go?
Well, on YouTube, it's called Doug Casey's Take, and it's actually pretty good. And internationalman.com, I write a weekly article, and David Stockman does, and Nick Giambruno, and it's actually quite good, and it's free. So those 2 things. And I always like to direct people's attention to my novels, because you can say things in fiction that you perhaps best not say in nonfiction form. They're called Speculator, which is about the mining stock business and a bush war in Africa and so forth. Drug Lord, where our hero goes from being a speculator to a drug lord, and we show that you can be a good guy as a speculator and a good guy as a drug lord. And then the last book is called Assassin, where he kind of gets pissed off and he becomes an assassin. And that's actually a quite interesting book. So all 3 of them are excellent. Supposedly there are 4 more in the series, but I'm not sure I'll bother writing them or not. So read those 3 novels. I think you'll be well rewarded also.
Fantastic. Doug, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. It's great to catch up with you again. We'll have to do this maybe early in the new year, get a bit of a take, like what's in store for us in 2025.
Yeah, let's see what happens. I can't wait to find out.
Yeah, 5 more days. 5 more days. Anxiety is building, I'll tell you that. So thank you so much, Doug, and everybody else. Thank you so much for tuning in to SOAR Financially. We highly appreciate you watching our videos and getting educated on what is going on in the markets. If you did like this interview, if you did like this conversation, there's a free way to support us. It's just hitting that like and subscribe button. It helps us out tremendously, and we can bring guests like Doug on more frequently as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with lots more here on SOAR Financially. Thank you and goodbye.